Thanks so much for joining us here today on a Thursday. I'm Marlon Bowling with you. And just a reminder, this is our last trading day before we get into the Easter holiday weekend. That's right. There is no ag commodity trade scheduled for Good Friday. They always take that day off. So this is going to be it. If there's going to be any positions taken before the holiday, it has to be done today. And the trade won't reopen until the Globex trade Sunday night, I believe. And just to confirm that, we'll bring in Brian Hoops, president of Midwest Market Solutions. We'll talk about this. One of those unusual kind of trading weekends here, Brian. Is that the way it works, where we can trade Sunday night if we need to?
Yeah, that's our next opportunity to trade. And somebody made the decision to have a NOPA crush report on Friday when nobody's around and nobody's able to trade it. But that number will be released tomorrow morning. And we've seen a little bit of positioning ahead of that report today with meal gaining against oil, as we expect to see a huge crush number in tomorrow's report that's going to be released.
Well, isn't that special to have that when nobody's working?
Exactly.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out. Very interesting. All right, we got the weekly export sales numbers out this morning from USDA because it's Thursday, and let's take a look at those numbers. So on the corn sales last week, we wondered if it would be a pretty big week, and it was. 1.74 million tons sold last week. Soybeans 1.01 million tons, soy meal 180,900. We had soy oil coming in at 6,100, wheat 321,300 tons. We also had numbers for sorghum, cotton, and rice. So let's take a look at the sorghum. We actually finally had a positive week where we had 8,500 tons sold. Remember, the last 2 or 3 weeks we've had net sales reductions. Upland cotton happened to be a marketing year low, I believe, at 191,300 running bales for the old and new crop marketing years. And the rice, 50,100 tons this time around. Let's talk about those numbers, along with the fact that, Brian, we just, as I was coming down to the studio, got a new update from USDA. We had an overnight sale. It's kind of been lacking here for a little bit, but had one today. Let's take a look. It was 132,000 tons of soybeans that were sold to China. So, and it was for the old crop marketing year. So they'll take that anytime right away, showing a little more urgent need on their part. That would equate to 2 boatloads, right?
Yeah, absolutely, Marlon. You know, you look at what the USDA chose to do last week with the supply and demand numbers. They only increased soybean exports for the marketing year by 25 million bushels. Well, we only need to be averaging about 3 to 3.5 million bushels each week to hit that number. And our sales this morning were well above that. And if you look at the China sale that you just mentioned, that's 4.4 million bushels. Just this one sale to China is going to, more than make up for what we need on a weekly basis to hit this forecast number. So I still think the USDA is too low on soybean exports. The corn exports, they're way out to lunch. They did not change anything last week, and we only need to be about 15 million bushels or so each week to hit that forecasted number. This week we were 52 million. Next week we're going to be in the 50s because we had a huge sale of corn this week to China. That's going to show up next Thursday's reports. We're going to be above 50 million bushels again next week, so we're well above what the USDA has forecasted, and there's going to be revisions coming. And so, as analysts start penciling in our balance sheets, these numbers are getting tighter and tighter as we go into the end of the marketing year in later this summer.
Well, speaking of tighter and tighter, I wanted to take a look at the May corn chart. Let's bring that up here. And the May and the new crop corn contracts both made new contract highs yesterday. Not only new contract highs, but new contract high closes as well on the May contract especially, which is the nearby, at least for the time being here. But the market obviously is kind of sensing what you were just talking about, that things are getting tighter as we go. So does that mean there is firm support and it's only upward from here?
Well, we'd like to think that. We're going into a 3-day weekend and the forecasts are starting to turn a little bit better. more conducive to allow some planning across the Midwest next week. So we may see some positioning based off of that forecast going into a 3-day weekend. By that, I mean, maybe some profit taking is going to come into this market and pull these markets lower by the closing bell, because nobody really wants to get caught Sunday night with a forecast going to allow the corn crop to be planted real rapidly and not have some protection in place. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the market, start to pull back from these levels as the day wears on. We get closer to that closing bell. But yeah, it'd be nice to say we're going to go straight higher. I don't think that's going to be the case. We're pretty much overextended already, due for a correction.
Okay, so everything was higher overnight. The corn, if we take a look at the quotes provided by bar chart here on the corn, 3 1/4 higher on the May at 786 3/4. December was up 1 3/4. Just a point of order, December 23 corn, a year and a half from now, you can lock that in for like 663, I believe. Soybean trade overnight anyway, we had the May 9 1/4 higher at 1685 1/4. And on the new crop November, we were up 3.5 cents. In the wheat market in Chicago, we went backwards. May was down 3 3/4 cents at 1109 3/4. July down 4 1/4. Kansas City had the May down 3 1/4 cents. July also down 3 1/4 overnight. In the spring wheat trade in Minneapolis, May was up 5.5, and we had July up 3 at 1162. Of course, the blizzard causing complications in the northern plains this week. Brian will take a look at the beef and pork export sales numbers when we come back. We are back with Brian Hoops. Let's take a look at the beef and pork export sales numbers that came out from USDA a short time ago. And as of last week on the beef side, we sold 17,300 tons. Now that does include a whopping 100 tons sold to Canada for next year. But anyway, 17,200 tons for this year. China did not buy any, and Mexico only bought 1,200 tons. It was interesting. South Korea bought 7,500. On the pork sales, 24,000 tons were sold, and that was down about 42% from last week. Mexico bought 6,100. China did buy 4,000 tons of U.S. pork last week, so they're back on the pork side of the ledger again. Let's look at where we closed yesterday on the live cattle market and on the quotes here. Let's bring up the big board with our quotes from bar chart. We had June 57 higher yesterday at 136.87. On the feeder cattle market, as we headed into yesterday's close, we had May up $1.02 at 161.95. On the lean hogs, if you recall, we had the May contract 72 lower at 111.52. Brian, what do you see happening on the open this morning?
Yeah, the cattle market has had a strong week of cash trade this week, kind of set us up for next week's cash trade to be even stronger. Big slaughter pace again this week, as we saw last week, a big number. We're going to be about as big as we can be with a holiday shortened kill week with the Good Friday holiday. So, yeah, we expect cash trade to be stronger next week. Once again, it keeps the futures market fairly strong. The exports that were out this morning, not, outstanding numbers by any means, down from previous weeks. Lack of China business is maybe a little concerning as far as our demand, but, Easter Sunday is kind of usually the first to talk about that's the spring grilling kickoff. And so we usually get better demand trends starting to develop as we go through the month of April into May and into the summer months. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the cattle market try and remain strong and maybe even move higher as the day progresses, anticipating that stronger cash trade next week.
And you can count me as contributing toward that demand. All right, thanks, Brian. Appreciate it. Have a good Easter weekend. Brian Hoops, Midwest Market Solutions. So, Janet, we're setting the table. We're about ready to start trading at the bottom of the hour.